The other thing is we are a number of participants on this call. So kindly ensure that your mic is on mute unless you're speaking, just so that we ensure that we are all able to follow through the conversations. And then should you have questions or comments, please feel free to use the Q&A button equally at the end of your screen. And then acknowledging the fact that not all of us speak English as our first language or French as our first language or Spanish. We invite you to speak slowly every time you have an opportunity to do so that we are able to give ample time to those that are supporting us to do simultaneous interpretation to be able to do that, and then allow everyone to follow through the discussion. And lastly, as I said, we are almost 60 now, and a number of people will continue to join. And when we have such a group of people, it's always helpful to remember to hold space for yourself and hold space for others as much as possible. But I'm also inviting everyone to equally feel a part of the conversation. So open up to conversations, to dialogue. Feel free to raise your hand when you have a question or a comment. And we will, sure have time to be able to listen to a number of questions, comments, and enrich the conversation. My name is Eileen Wakesho. I work with Namati, Kenya. So I'm joining you from Nairobi this sunny afternoon. It's pretty beautiful. The sun is up and it's looking like a bright day. Now, with those housekeeping issues, allow me to invite you all to today's call. And to start us off is an incredible art piece by Alexis. And I will be inviting Alexis to share that as art piece. But even as she has that as art piece, she'll speak to us about, the inspiration around the art piece, and then how she has interacted or connected with the network and with the theme. Alexis?
Buenos días con todos. No sé si se me logre escuchar. ¿Me confirman, por favor? Correcto, muchas gracias. Bueno, les voy comentando un poco mientras pasan las diapositivas. Yo soy de Ecuador. En efecto,
I am from Ecuador, and my photos and my poetry is inspired in the rural activists that work on social justice with a gender perspective. And what I want to transmit through my photos and my writings is the constant struggle of people from rural communities to try and protect the nature. In my country, people in general respect in nature. It is something that we have been protecting for millions of years, and that has to do with the preservation of their cultures, their traditions, their ecosystem. So we work on protecting the rights of people in vulnerable areas, and the different governments have always tried to silence our voices, the voices of people that can't go out from their territories, from the communities, and show the wonderful nature we have. They always try to silence our voices. This is why I try and describe I do these descriptions that the limits between the sky and the sea is our fingers, because it is a way of trying to raise awareness of all these issues, because there are many people who have very valuable voices that are struggling for these rights, and they must be listened to. And they work cultivating cacao chocolate. Ecuador is a very diverse country. And this is a call to action to try and protect the natural resources we have. So this is all I can say about the inspiration I took for this work, for this piece of art piece.
Great, thank you so much, Alexis. Those are beautiful photos, and so thank you for sharing your work with us. To see the beauty of nature, but also the efforts that goes into protecting and preserving nature is beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing your work with us and with everyone.
Gracias a ustedes por la oportunidad.
Thank you all for this opportunity, really.
Great. All right. Moving on, just a reminder that our call today is focused on integrating gender transformative approaches in legal empowerment. And the focus is how are we going to ensure that gender justice amidst land, environment, and climate action. One of the things that we acknowledge is that many of us who have joined this space either work on issues around land justice, environmental justice, or even climate justice. And all these three issues affect women and men differently. And so as we do our work, we have been trying to ensure that their efforts to acknowledge the differentiated impacts of our work, on women and men, and in some cases, put some efforts to try and ensure that we do not exacerbate existing inequalities. And so the essence of this call is to provide a platform where we're able to share some of our work, we're able to learn from each other, but more importantly, we're able to figure out how our work collectively can be, can make a contribution towards becoming gender transformative. So that's really the essence of today's call. So on the call, we have people that are working proactively on gender transformative approaches. There are those that are working towards it. And so we are at different levels of the spectrum, which I will be speaking to shortly. And so really inviting everyone to a space of openness as we learn together, as we share our experiences, but more importantly, as we connect to each other, because the other essence of these calls is to connect each other and connect our work for broader impact. We're building a movement that is really ensuring that we are able to constantly challenge land and environmental injustices, but that we're also building movements that are able to define the things that are important to them within that spectrum. Now, that said, this call is a successor to a physical meeting that happened in Zimbabwe, where a number of network members and a number of organizations participated. And the Zimbabwe meeting was just looking at how do we build together towards gender transformative. I will, in a minute, just speak about the gender spectrum. And I know this is not super new to everyone, but just to ensure that we are all on the same space when we talk about gender spectrum, and then invite ourselves to see where exactly are we within our organizations, within the work that we are doing. Now, the gender spectrum is in such a way that it starts from gender discriminatory. And so when you look at gender discriminatory, you're looking at outright efforts that discriminate against women and men. So there are actions that are outrightly discriminatory. Okay, so that's gender discriminatory. And that is sort of at the last piece of the spectrum. Okay. And then when we move to from gender discriminatory, the second level is gender blind. So gender blind, you're unconsciously or consciously being blind to the fact that whatever interventions or programs or anything that you do has differentiated impacts for women and men. So you're blind to that fact. You don't acknowledge that. Discriminatory, outrightly, some of your practices discriminate either women or men. But in gender blind, you do not acknowledge that there are indeed different impacts for women and men. From gender blind, you move to gender sensitive. And in gender sensitive, what happens is you are sensitive to acknowledge that indeed your work, your program, your interventions affect women and men differently. So you're sensitive to that fact. But then you do not go beyond that. You don't go beyond that acknowledgement. And so if it's in a report, you'll acknowledge that your, say, land titling program affects women and men differently. That's it. So gender sensitive, you just acknowledge, but there's no effort beyond that acknowledgement. The fourth level is responsive, so gender responsive. Now, gender responsive, you ideally move from acknowledging that indeed there are differentiated impacts to responding to those differentiated impacts. For example, you have a project that is happening among, say, indigenous communities or among pastoral communities, where there are underlying cultural practices or cultural beliefs that may hinder women from speaking in the presence of men. Now, being gender responsive will involve responding to that cultural belief or practice. Might mean you separating women from men in meetings and giving that safe space for them to be able to articulate their issues in quote unquote a safe space. That in that way you're responding to. And then lastly is gender transformative. And gender transformative, you move beyond just responding, which is in many cases not systemic, not well thought, you're just responding to something, to going down to the deep-rooted systemic differences that then create space to breed those inequalities. And so you go deep down to the root causes, to the systemic change, systemic issues that allow differentiated treatment among women and men. So you start from gender discriminatory, where outrightly there are discriminatory practices. Gender blind, you choose not to acknowledge that there are different impacts for women and men, so you're blind to that fact. Sensitive, you acknowledge but do nothing. Responsive, you respond based on the issues that you're seeing. And then transformative, which allows you to go to the issues that create an environment to allow gender discrimination to thrive. So going down to the deep rooted issues. Now, if you go through the spectrum, discriminatory way to gender approaches, you'd agree with me that each of us in this call are at different spaces within our organizations, within our initiatives. And so I'm going to invite us to a place where you reflect on where you are at, as your organization or your program or your intervention, whatever work you're doing. Are you gender blind? Are you specific? Are you responsive? Or are you transformative? And so we will have a poll that allows us to pick where we are. And then we'll see how that plays out. Please feel free to pick the part of the spectrum where you are. And then we will shortly discuss that. Zembi, let me know when you have the polls.
Okay, I'm ending the poll right now and sharing the results.
Right, thank you very much, Zembi. So from the polls, I don't know if everybody's able to see, I can see the poll. The highest number of us in this room are gender responsive, which means we constantly respond to the need that arises. I'm glad to see people being very honest that we, in some cases within our practices, whether within our organizations or within the different interventions that we are doing, we are totally discriminatory. And so 5% of us on this call, we are about slightly over 80, indicate that, you know, clearly there are aspects of their work that's outrightly gender discriminatory. And then 3% are saying, well, we are totally gender blind. We are dealing with serious issues, and sometimes we find ourselves totally blind on our interventions, on our programming, on our initiatives. And then 15%, so a fairly decent number, say, well, we are sensitive. You know, we acknowledge that indeed there are differentiated impacts. We ensure that our registration forms have a column for gender and people indicate, you know, if they're female or male or otherwise. But then beyond that, we don't do anything with that data that we collect. So we are sensitive. In our report, we will say how many people we reached out to, how many women, how many men. But beyond that, then we do nothing about it. That's 15% saying we are sensitive. And the highest number is responsive. So, well, you know, from time to time, based on need, we're constantly responding. If it's a meeting that we need to be able to separate women and men, we ensure that. If it's a meeting that ensures that language or interpretation is available so that women are able to articulate their issues, we provide that interpretation. But then in many cases, this, our responsiveness is, you know, we are responding to, it's not properly thought through. We don't integrate it at the start of our program or at the start of our intervention, and so on. I think 28% talked about them being transformative, which means they go down to dealing with the root causes of inequalities, which is ideally we all want to be able to get to, so that our work is not just being sensitive or being responsive, but our work challenges the deep-rooted inequalities, issues that continue to exacerbate inequalities between women and men as we deal with land, environment, and climate justice issues. So fairly impressive. I think we are at a good place, you know, very diverse in terms of where we are within the spectrum. And that provides a good ground for us to learn from each other. Those that have made in terms of being transformative, those that, you know, still discriminatory, I think is a chance for us to be able to connect and learn from each other, because the ideal is for all of us to walk towards a space where our work is challenging the deep-rooted inequalities. So thank you everyone for participating on that call. Now, allow me now to bring to you a panel discussion. And the panel brings together incredible panelists from across the globe. And these panelists are incredible because of the work that they do. And they will be sharing with us some of the incredible pieces that they do in a quest to be able to get to ensure that their work is gender transformative. And so our first speaker is Abhishag Wabwire, who's an advocate of the Court of Judicature in Uganda and currently serves as a project coordinator at the Federation of Women Lawyers of FIDA Uganda. She's passionate about advocating for the rights of women and children, and she'll be sharing with us today about her experience working with cultural structures, her experience in building, in ensuring that their work is making a contribution towards ensuring that they challenge deep-rooted inequalities. And then the second speaker is Maria Sembero. And Maria specializes in public policy analysis and designs. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science. And she has extensive experience in public management, monitoring, and analyzing environmental regulations that relate to investments. She also has additional experience in community relations and gender issues. We're really glad to have you, Maria. And then the last speaker would be Ian. And Ian joins us from Namati, Myanmar. where he leads the work of Nameti Myanmar in a very complex context. And he will be sharing with us how that looks like within the context that he is currently operating, what it looks like to be able to build and strengthen capacities of Nameti as an institution, but also of partners that he works with closely to ensure that their work is becoming more and more transformative. And so with that introduction of our three speakers, allow me to bring to you first Abhishek, who, as I mentioned, comes to us from Uganda. And Abhishek, as I invite you to this conversation, please help us understand how you incorporate gender transformative approaches in your work, especially because I know you work with cultural structures. So help us understand how you do this in Uganda. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see you too.
My name is Transfida Uganda. We really try to integrate because we understand that as we are pushing for empowerment of women and girls, we cannot do that if the culture institutions, which is a big deal in our country, if they're not on board with the kind of work that we are doing. So I'll really, because I now have limited time, so I'll just really go straight to the point and try to speak as much as I can in the time that I have. So I know in the different districts that we implement, culture structures are big. And these ones, they really have a lot of say in what is going to be done in the community. If you come and say that, oh, today we are going to dig, and the community leader, the culture leader says, no, we're not going to dig, people will not dig, right? And they have upgraded to a point that they have structures, they have parliaments, they have communities, they have committees that people sit on. So we saw that for women's voices to be heard, they have to be part of these structures. That's how we began our advocacy. For example, in one of the districts that we have where they have a fully fledged parliament with ministers, with members of parliament, but in a cultural setting, we went to see that there was no woman sitting at this parliament. So they were discussing issues of women and young people without having them in their room to give their opinions and to give their ideas on what should be done for them. It also goes back to the issue of patriarchy, which is really big in our African setting. So we had to approach it in a very sensitive way. We reached out to the cultural leader, their king, and pushed for amendment of the constitution. So it's what we have done in the different districts that we are operating is we are amending the constitutions of these cultural institutions. We work with them, we make sure that we are not trying to usurp their power, but we are trying to find an entry point for a woman or two to be able to sit on these boards and share their experiences, their lived experiences. And when decisions are being made, their experiences can also be put into consideration. So we have been able to have about 3 constitutions amended, and we'll include that at least there should be 2 women on the parliament, at least as a given, because the criteria of being a member of this parliament, 1, you have to be a clan leader. And to be a clan leader, you must be a man above the age of 40, you must be married. So you would find that there is no option for a woman to even contest to join the parliament because I am not even a clan leader. So we have found ways of working with these council institutions to make it easier for women to also contest for these positions. Like I may be a woman, but at least the criteria for being a clan leader now is just be a person above the age of 30 to come on these boards. When decisions are being made, they will also be consulted, and they can also have their voices to be heard. But again, most importantly is we have tried to empower women to build their capacity, so that when you take in this space, you're going to be able to ably articulate your needs as a woman and represent the women in the community, right? We're not going to just sit there, tokenism, and just sit there like, oh, I'm a part of the culture committee, but what are you doing? What are you bringing to the table? So we have been able to build their capacity that when they're in that space, they can actually speak. We have also work with community structures where we have community legal volunteers, where we have CLVs. We have built this people's capacity that you find that the culture committees are reaching out to them, to these women, to consult on issues on how they are going to handle cases, right? So in one of the districts that we implement, we found that these women have been given a lot of legal knowledge. They're not even lawyers, but have trained them. They know the legal knowledge. They understand the context of the area. That the culture committees would always consult them. So when they're having like a mediation, they're consulting them to come and be part of that mediation. And if they were like, you know what, at this point, these women have to be incorporated into the culture structure, that they can come and speak to what they understand, and they are empowered. They know the knowledge, they understand what is being done. So we need that expertise, because we can't afford to pay a consultant to come and handle cases for us. But we have these women that have been trained by FIDA. We need that expertise free of charge, but also the women, it can win for them, because they are able to articulate the issues that affect other women in their communities, and these are taken on by the men who they are working with. So for us, the key is tackle the culture institutions, work with them. Should we show them the importance of having a woman in that space, in that decision-making space? Because at the end of the day, you're going to go back to a woman at home. And if they're disgruntled as a man, you're also going to be disgruntled, right? So we show them the importance of having a woman in that space, the importance of having women empowered in the culture aspect. And we are seeing results. We are seeing that women are now being part of this space, which was not the case maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. It's interesting how you work with cultural leaders, even though they embrace certain aspects that might not be as progressive in terms of, patriarchy. But then these are structures that you're saying you cannot ignore them. And so, slowly engaging those structures to be able to ensure that, because culture is not static, it keeps changing. And so that even as it changes, that it's changing towards acknowledging the differentiated impacts for women and men, and working towards being transformative. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you well.
All right. Before I invite our next speaker, please allow me to just reshare some instructions around interpretation. So on your screen, at the bottom of your screen, there are a number of buttons. So there's the share screen, the summary, there's the AI companion, and then there's the interpretation button. So that's circular. When you click that interpretation button, you'd see different languages there. And so there's English, French, Spanish. Please select the language that you're comfortable with, and we will ensure that you're able to follow through the conversation with the help of our incredible interpreters. Another small reminder is, sometimes when we're speaking about the issues we deeply care about, we forget and we speak very fast. So inviting us to, speak slowly so that the interpreters are able to catch up and interpret and ensure that everybody is following through this incredible conversation. All right, moving on swiftly, allow me to invite our next speaker, and that is Maria. Maria works with DAR. And Maria will be sharing with us from her experience working to engage communities, how this has been, how she designs and engages communities in a way that's transformative. Maria, you have the floor.
Buenos días con todos, muchas gracias por la invitación. Yo quisiera hablar sobre el tema del compromiso en el trabajo comunitario con las mujeres, con lideresas.
Leaders, and I would like to define also or conceptualize what is commitment. So, and I found 3 important concepts that are related to this. One is capacity, responsibility, and adaptation. Capacity is the knowledge and the different tools we have to work with women in different frames, in different territories, in different areas and contexts. Responsibility is that we have to be aware that every intervention, even if it seems very small, it will impact in the territory in which we're working. And adaptation is that we have to trust that every territory, every context that we're working has its own culture, its own dynamics that are maybe different, and that we have to observe them first and we have to analyze them. And obviously, our objective is to transform, to change and arrive to a frame of equal rights. And in this, it is really, really important that we are committed. And I want to check out certain tools or actions that can help us to work correctly with a gender perspective. The first one that I would like to define is the diagnosis of the gender situation. So it is really, really important that in the place where we work, we need to have some kind of research and kind of analysis of how the different categories are developed. For example, what type of dynamics are there, exist there in things that have to do with race, socioeconomic difference, with the different class, different opportunities, also intersect with gender. And here there is a very important indicator, and it's to look at the different gender categories in a kind of integrated, and this is where we work with intersectionality, how all of these different power relations intersect with all the categories. Something that I also want to point out on is the awareness, raising awareness. We have to understand what are the different gender dynamics in society, what are the different gender perspectives in society, and understand that if we are specialists that are going to develop some kind of work, we have to develop some kind of a methodology to raise awareness in the communities we are working on. So we have to work with inclusive participation, find safe spaces, spaces that are differentiated with spaces for women, spaces for men. And here there are 3 points that I want to point out. And that our work, our intervention has to take into account economic empowerment opportunities also, and the prevention of violence. This is important because in patriarchal systems, this is very important. There is violence also. So we may organize a workshop and the women participate, but then when we go away, what happens to that women afterwards? We are sometimes not aware of different violences that occur in the private sphere. So we have to think what is our impact, and we have to try and have a positive impact in every single of the power relations that exist in a community. Very important, and I wanted to point this out because we have to work with the whole community, and we want to try and have a positive impact with the whole community. And this is all these theories about gender positive, gender negative, because our interventions that our work sometimes is questioned. Today, sometimes gender is considered as something that is negative, and especially in patriarchal systems. So we need to think about all these power all these power dynamics in order to do a really gender transformative work.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think it's super helpful to hear you articulate the issues that you do as you engage communities, and you start us off by appreciating the importance of being able to do a diagnostic study just to understand where people are at, to acknowledge the cultural practices so that your interventions are able to align, but more importantly, your interventions do not cause harm. I think one of the things you've called out is sometimes your intervention could potentially cause harm to women when they are in that private space. And so being very systematic as we engage communities is useful. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Last but not least on this question, I want to invite my colleague Jens. to speak to us. I mean, many of you know what's happening in Myanmar, the current security situation. And yet, you know, people are still continuing to work, are still continuing to challenge injustices. And so I'm inviting Ian to speak to us about, you know, how he and his colleagues are able to do this. We constantly need to be able to build and strengthen capacities of ourselves, of those we work with, of partners, of communities. And so how do we do this? Ian, do you have a thought?
Thanks, everyone. We in Myanmar, we work with the partners organizations. Like, you know, this is really challenging task, you know, to work on the land and environment justice issues and legal empowerment in the context in the of the military regimes. So, but like, you know, I'm feeling lucky to be in the like kind of right positions, having a kind of experience working in the past 10 years within the you know, Myanmar with the existing trusted organizations and parties at the grassroots level. So having the like kind of rooted like, you know, experience in the land and environment justice and having the grassroots community-based parties and the strong local partners organizations is also a kind of you know, a great opportunity for us to survive in this challenging context. Like, I just wanted to share how do we really work. It's like kind of we are in partnership with the local organizations, and then the partners also recruit the delegates at the grassroots community levels. You know, but like, you know, the delegate that we and the partners organization that we are working here now is like kind of, you know, new. It has been like kind of we having in long-term partnerships and in long-term relationships with these people. So we know each other, and they are also expert in their areas of work. So, but like, you know, how do we integrate gender transformative approach in the legal empowerment and also in the like kind of, you know, land and environment justice? It's also like, I feel like, you know, it is very important about the timings. Like, you know, when we talk about the capacity developments and like kind of knowledge sharing, integrating approaches and making these like, you know, knowledge in actions, it's also important for us to have a right timings. So for example, like currently, like we talk about the like kind of goal settings for the next years or the futures, like, you know, years, something like that. So whenever we are talking about those things, like, you know, the first, like, you know, within the like the partners and like kind of goal staff members, it is important for us to talk about those things. I don't talk about the capacity building, but like I feel like, you know, people already have a kind of very strong, solid knowledge around the areas of work, and also in the general, it has been work on this piece for a long time. So, but like, you know, having that regular conversation and have using the right timings to talk about those things is also very important, and also it's also give us a room to give you know, focus more on the gender issues, and then how do we integrate those in our, you know, plannings and allocating resources, something like that. So this is very important. So I feel like, you know, when we talk about the capacity developments and capacity building, it's not always about the training. It is also about the ongoing conversations and learning from each other, and also using that new informations and like change of the environment, integrating in our action plan. So that is very important, I would say. So that's what we start from the kind of joint program design or co-designing the like kind of activities. This is the like first one. And also, like, you know, we didn't stop there. We also talked to the grassroots parties. And like even at the initial early planning phases, like what can they do? What are the real needs that they see in the grassroots community? And then in this challenging context, like, you know, how do they feel about the rules of the party, especially like thinking from the gender transformative and gender issues as in the land environment justice issue. So we have a kind of that kind of, you know, series or discussions and meeting. I would not say that is a training, but it kind of, it's also give us a lot of learning. It is kind of two-way learning. That's give us to like, you know, decide like what activities are the priorities and what are the resources needed, and how can we prioritize the allocation of resources. I mean, it's not just about the findings, it's also about the human resources. So like, thinking about the like those kind of allocation of resource and also the needs also give us opportunity to strengthen the areas of work integrating gender transformative actions as well. So for example, like, when we need to relocate or like recruits like the female paralegals. Let's say like we may be thinking like, two female paralegals nearby, like, if they have a strong justice seeker that they are working on, and then in that case, like, how can we pair those people together so that they are in stronger position? They can also face the other challenging risks together and also learn and share each other's experience, something like that. So this kind of thing. And also when they are also engaging with the like community leaders or also even the like military officers or whatever, regimes that they are facing on, like, it's also help them to have a kind of stronger information and experience, not back up with the like data that they already have years collected. Like, we also have a kind of sense of a really solid piece data and the experience. So those kind of, the evidence-based like conversation also have them in the stronger position, talking about the gender issue as well, and also how the women suffers the same issue as men in the like land environment justice issues, something like that. So this is like, the way that we talk about the capacity deployment and also action planning, and then making sure that how can we use our knowledge and experience really take to the actions at the appropriate levels. Aliens and Elijah talk about like the phase of like gender transformatives, let's say in discrimination to the transformative. How are we also reflecting regularly, because it's also like depends on the situations. It really fluid and dynamics, and so it is not always, we may not be always at one stage, so we are falling up and down. So let's say we need to adjust our actions and priorities of time and resources, and also like based on that kind of dynamics. Sometimes it's also about the motivation as well. Sometimes we are also feeling down, and then maybe even if we feel when the colleague is and the community that are in stronger position last month, but maybe that person maybe in the different situation next month. So we also need to have that kind of regular conversation and adjusting our the supports and activities that we can work together on that. So I will take a pause from here. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yi, and thanks for being here and for sharing your experiences with us. It's I mean, it's particularly striking to hear you remind us that capacity is not just about trainings. It's about the day-to-day conversations we have, the engagements we have with partners, with communities, the conversations we have at the point of designing an intervention, throughout the implementation phase and even at the point of monitoring. You also remind us the importance of being able to stop and pause. I mean, we're constantly working, we're constantly moving, and sometimes we hardly get space to pause and ask ourselves some of these critical questions in terms of, is our work being transformative? Is our work just being responsive? Is it just being sensitive? Is it blind? Is it discriminatory in one way or another? So even just creating spaces to be able to pause and reflect is super important. Now we're running slightly short of time, and I want us to move to group discussions. But even as we do that, just a few reminders. We have the Q&A tab. Please feel free to post your question or comment, and our panelists will try as much as possible to respond to the questions that are posted on the chat. And then the gender spectrum that I talked about has also been posted on the chat. And I want us to move into groups. So when we started, I asked you to reflect on where exactly are you as an organization. And I know when you picked the option you picked, there were reasons as to why you picked that option. And so within our small groups, a chance to just connect at a personal level. Let's connect and hear from each other why we picked the spectrum we picked. If we picked gender specific, why did we pick that? What within our organizations is specific, is gender specific? For those that pick transformative, we would love to hear from you in the small groups. How did you get here? So that we're able to learn. And then the other question that I want you to respond to in the groups is, what kind of learnings, resources, or tools would be most helpful to you in helping overcome the difficulties in making your work more and more gender transformative? So what research resources, what learnings, what tools will be most helpful to you as you work towards ensuring that your work is gender transformative? The questions will be posted on the chat. So the first one we're reflecting on is, you picked, a section within the spectrum. Why did you pick it? Share with your colleagues. And then the second one is, what resources do you need? What tools do you need to help you, become more and more gender transformative? The questions are also posted on the chat, and we will be moving into groups through the help of our colleagues. Kindly move us to groups and inviting us all to really participate in the group conversations. Thank you. Benjamin, do you want to share what you discussed in the group? Okay. Please go ahead, Mahauton.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mahauton Akpo. I come from Benin. I come from a French country, but I will try to speak in English. So in my group, we talk about gender transformative. We talk about problems we face in our countries, in our different countries. So we talk about access to land for women, mostly in rural communities. We talk about also problems about climate justice, about women. They are most of the time victims of climate change, and we talk about how we can do to tackle these problems. And as resources we can need to improve our activities, our action. We talk about access to digital skills and access to information to permit to empower women to get more information about their rights and to know how they can be more free in their activities in their life. So thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for sharing some of the resources that you think would be helpful. Digital skills is one of them. And I'm sure at the end, we will speak to some of the resources that are available, but also some of the platforms. All right. Idris, do you want to share what you discussed? Idrissa, what you discussed in your group?
Yes. I really want to thank you. This is my first time to join up, and I've been following all this while, and I've been following through newsletters and all this, but I've not been opportune to join in the conversation. But today I have the opportunity to join the conversation. I have been in the land issues and environment and climate change issue for quite a long time. I can remember it's almost over 15 years. Presently, I am the legal advisor to the District Multi-Stakeholder Platform that is formed in Port Loko. In Sierra Leone, we have a district called Port Loko District. I am the legal advisor. I formed part of the team that has been going around to set up the District Multi-Stakeholder Platform. I know you are aware of those things. We look at land justice, the right to access land, and look at multi-stakeholder investors. We look at so many things around land governance. So that's the reason why I joined up. Then I also I am the director for Youth Initiative. Growth and advancement. I am the director. We're dealing with youth on the area of environmental issues, climate change, and the human rights, and also other areas that deal with the rights of women and young people. So as I said, this is my first time joining up on these Zoom meetings. I've been missing out, but today I was opportune to have time because I was taking my bar final. So I completed, and then I am waiting now for the results. So that's why I was not able to join them, but now I have time and I can take part and join up in any of the programs that will come up in the future. That's what I have to say for now. But we have serious problems with regards to land governance. We've got reforms, we've got new legislations in place, the National Land Policy, the National Land Act. All these are now in place. In fact, we now have the National Land Commission that is being actually put in place by government. Government is receiving funding from World Bank, European Union, and others to implement. But we need civil society organizations like us to push, forward, because when it comes to dealing with government, they have their own way of doing things. But we serve as a pressure group and as a watchdog to ensure that some of these things actually that are in these legislations are implemented, and that can be done when we have a vibrant civil society organization. That's why I actually join up with you people, so that whenever there is any available resources to help civil society organization, will be considered, especially that now that we have these new laws with regards to land governance. So our organization will be able to go out there and do sensitization through workshops and some trainings. We have traditional leaders who are still holding on to the fact that the old law do not give the right to women to own land in Sierra Leone. That was the old law. But now the law has changed, but they are finding it difficult to cope. So we need total sensitizations, we need outreach, we need some trainings and workshops for these people, so that they will understand what is entailed in the new law. As I say, we now have new laws. We've gone away from the old law. I think these are some of the things that we have. We still have the challenges, actually, especially to cascade this new law, so that people in the villages will understand these laws, so that they will know.
So much.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah,
that's right. Thank you very much, Idris, for that. I don't know if there's any quick hand, but if there's none, I will invite our panelists for a last reflection. And our panelists, I'm sorry, but I will just have to give you a minute each. And in your minute, you could reflect on why you think legal empowerment is. I mean, there are many approaches, but why legal empowerment is a helpful approach towards creating a gender transformative approach in what we do. So, you could share some thoughts around that, and then any other reflections for a minute. Do we want to start with Abhishek?
Thank you once again. So I will try to be as brief as possible. So legal empowerment can take so many forms. For us, one angle that we have taken is community sensitization, like for women to understand their rights and what to do when these rights are violated, to reach out to ensure that they get redress for their rights. So when a woman knows that this is my right, I have a right to land, right? For example, I'm a widow, my husband died, we bought this land together, so obviously it will come to me, and that is my right. So when somebody is trying to take away that right, it will be easy for her to know, no, this is my right, simply we are not good for this land, I'm trying to violate this right, and where do I go to get redress for this right? I can get a lawyer, I can go to the local council courts to have this issue handled. If that feeling, they can go to the mainstream courts and get the support. But this comes from the fact that they know that they have this right. So we're empowering them to know that they have this right and they can actually get redress in courts for these rights. I don't know if that is, I've tried to summarize it. Like for me, I'll think of the aspect of knowledge, being able to know, and the capacity to be able to speak up on a violation and seek redress confidently without somebody trying to put you down because you're a woman, you don't deserve to speak because you're a woman. Women do not speak in public, but once they know and they can speak confidently, they will be able to advocate for their rights. And yeah, please break our lives.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. Maria, any last comments from you?
El por qué es importante.
Well, why it is important, this transformative approach for this legal empowerment for gender transformation? Yes. Well, as I mentioned, my colleague just mentioned, it doesn't only help us to know our rights and the rights that we have to struggle for, but also these steps help us to change structural systems. So in order to try and be equal and equitable, and also to recognize people that are invisibilized, that are invisible. In our group, we were speaking that when we speak about gender, we don't only speak about women, we speak about all the different gender identities. And I think that the legal framework, both national and international, helps us make visible all these different gender identities. So this is also very important.
Great, thank you very much, Maria. A final comment from you, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. I would say, like, we talk about the legal empowerment. We talk about knowing, helping people to know and use law, and also not just that, also take part in shaping law process. So it's really, I think, it's about also talking about the inclusions and also like kind of using the people's powers. So when we talk about people, it's like, everyone includes, like, both men and women and like different gender identities. So then, like, the challenges that people face at the grassroots levels, and using laws, shaping law, and it's also talking about the norms and like customs, those kind of things. So like, having legal empowerment approach integrated in the gender transformative actions is, I think, is a perfect model that, like, more people, like, can have a chance to talk about those challenges and also take part in shaping the norms and customs and systems and laws and institutions that is affecting them. So I would say, this is like ongoing struggle that we have to work on, and then we cannot work just like, one individual. It has to be collective, it has to be inclusive, everyone has to be respected among each other's identity as well. So I would say that is.
Great, thank you very much, Ian, for those thoughts. Friends, we are running badly, as far as time is concerned, and I want to be as respectful as possible to your time. So please feel free to post your question or comment on the chat, and we will try to address them even as we move closer to closing today's call. In the last few minutes, please allow me to invite Nzembi to share with us a number of platforms that we have that will allow you to engage, within yourselves and with the network. So please go ahead, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Aileen, and thank you everyone for attending today's movement call. So we'll be having the Gender Working Group meeting on November the 5th from 5 to 6 p.m. East African time. So the link is posted in the chat, so feel free to register. We'll be offering translation in French and Spanish during the meeting. Among other topics that we'll discuss, we'll also discuss the topics which we'll want to discuss during the future working groups. We also have a couple of other working groups that we have. So in the Land and Environmental Justice Initiative, we have 4 working groups, which are namely the Corporate Accountability, Climate Action, community engagement, and gender transformative working groups. So these spaces, we share updates and information from our respective contexts and articulate campaign demands and coordinate to act within the advocacy spaces. So just a brief about the corporate accountability, whereby we discuss how to hold corporations accountable for land and environmental justice. For the climate finance working group, we find ways for impacted communities to be invested in as leaders to address the different climate crises. And for the climate finance working group, we find, for the community engagement working group, we explore ways how to build community power, how to ensure that frontline community members remain the leaders of global flights in the different key advocacy spaces. And for the gender transformative working group, we share insights and strategies on how to incorporate gender transformative approaches in our work at a community and also at an organizational level. So for the gender transformative working group, we'll be meeting on a quarterly basis. For the different working groups, 3 of the working groups, we have paused Spanish translation in the short term, but we'll have the translation up once again. The gender transformative working group we still offer Spanish translation. So if you want to join any of, if you're Spanish speaking and want to join any of the working groups, please feel free to do so. But please be aware that we won't be offering the Spanish translation, which will be back, and we'll communicate that. So we also have the newsletter where we share the current happenings and also the events, which is also posted in the chat box. Please also feel free to subscribe to the newsletter. And thank you, Aileen. I will hand it over back to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ruth. I mean, clearly there are many opportunities for us to remain connected. And so ensure you plug in so that you can follow through conversations. You're able to be updated about the different resources that are available. And you also are able to share from your end, because really these platforms are about ensuring that we remain connected, but that we are also able to share and grow together. Now, as we're coming close to today's call, I'm going to ask Ruth to share with us a poll to just get a sense of whether this call was useful to you and whether you had something that would influence how you do your work. Please feel free to pick the option that works for you on the poll. And that will be useful in terms of ensuring that we continue to host these movement calls that address some of your needs, even as we continue to grow together. All right. So as people continue to fill the poll, allow me to really thank each one of you for joining today's discussion. I think these movement calls can only be possible if we have you join them. And so a huge thank you to our interpreters. It's extremely important to be able to communicate in a language that we are comfortable with and have someone support us with interpretation. So thank you to our French, English, and Spanish interpreters. You've made the conversation, you've made it easier for us to follow through the conversation and to speak to each other. So a huge thank you to you. And then secondly, a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing with us our experiences, way from Uganda all the way to Myanmar, and for just allowing us to learn from some of the issues that you're battling with, but some of the strategies that you are engaging with. And then, most importantly, to everyone, we had about 80 participants, log on to this call. And so such a huge number, but also we had diverse people from joining from across the world. And that's really what this movement calls are about. So a huge, huge, huge thank you to everyone. In the last minute, I'm going to invite Rebecca to speak about the next movement call, and then to close our discussions today. Rebecca.
Sure. So thank you all so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to hear all the different work that's happening across the network, and exciting to hear about each other's work. And this is a space where we are hoping to connect, learn, and act together. The next call is on November 7th. which is another opportunity to connect, learn, and act and celebrate together. At this conversation, we're going to focus on the Carbon Justice Campaign and share about how different network members are responding to carbon projects at the community, national, and global level. It will be a great opportunity to learn about what's happening across the network and celebrate the early victories that are already coming. And we just thank you again for being part of this space, and we encourage you to continue to join. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca, and thanks everyone. Have a great evening, a great afternoon.